What I'm going to do is just kind of give you an overview about the gauge and stuff. Some of you may be familiar with it, and some of you may be using it. Some want to learn more about how it can actually make their training more simplified. So if you use a smartphone and you can operate a smartphone, then you can pick up the new gauge and use it immediately. It's just that intuitive. All the things you see on the screen are easily to be touched and interact with. The one thing that's become the #1 selling feature is actually the calibration interval of 5 years. Almost everybody here is either a trainer or involved in BPI or HERS or weatherization. They're very stringent about is your gauge and your fans in calibration, and they want that stuff to be sent back per manufacturer specs. This manufacturer spec is every 5 years have a check for calibration. We do recommend you do, with any of your gauges that you have, try and do a self-diagnostic or self-check. They're on the back of our quick guides. The display, basically anywhere you see, you can touch and interact. The fan speed at the top. I will show you the live gauge also. Channel A is above channel B. This is what the screen looks like as the home screen. So when you just turn it on, this is what it looks like until you actually make it active. All right. And obviously you can press set pressure or set speed or settings and interact with the gauge. This is what the screen will look like when you're actually running the test. It actually has obviously a stop button in the middle, and you can increase or decrease the pascals up or down 5, and that's kind of very helpful and intuitive to try if you want to do a multi-point test. So if you turn on the add feature and I go up and down, I can actually see results quickly in multiple points as the many times ResNet or other criteria want you to do a multi-point test. To change the range, the rings, or change the device, you just merely press the actual icon. I'll kind of go through that when we do a quick live demo. To change your results, this is formerly known as the mode. So if you have a other gauge, either if it's Retrotec or Energy Conservatory, they use the word mode. We actually decided to go with, here's what you're actually doing is you're getting results. And this gauge will actually calculate the results live for you. So right now I have it set for CFM, and to actually change the results live on the screen, I merely press that area. It brings up a screen. I can select what criteria I want it to calculate. And notice that it will do flow area for CFM per 100 square feet. I can also toggle that to do 1,000 or different units. And below that, which has been one of my favorite features, is it will determine your air changes per hour live while I actually operate the gauge. You press the bottom little circle and it toggles through different pages. And there's a variety of options from different EQLA or EFLA. And I know other manufacturers use a tablet to do all this. This is all done in the Gauge Live. And some of these features aren't even available on other options, other tablets. So as I keep tabbing, going through the circle on the bottom, I can select now what I want. Press the arrow to go back. So I went from CFM to, I'll select air changes per hour, and now I can actually see live what's happening on the gauge. And really, it's that simple. For those of you that own a DM2, you know that these are options, but it was not easy to get through or to get access to. Which I want to ask real quick, what kind of gauges do you guys teach with? There's inherited features that if you're used to working with Retrotec equipment, you just know it just always has done this. So whether it can test at any pressure, and I mean any pressure, like if I'm training, I will actually use 10 pascals as a training pressure because I can actually see results and actually talk to my class while I actually have things running in the same room. So that's always been a great training feature for me. It keeps the last settings, a variety of other stuff. The goal was it was not designed so that people would not have to learn how to do it properly, but to avoid the mistakes that are common in the field, whether you've been doing it for 2 weeks or 2 months or 5 years. Sometimes you're on the wrong device or you're on the wrong range, and this new gauge was really designed to have things right up front, and you can see exactly what you have and actually share what you actually are doing with other people. I highly encourage you to go check out Retrotec's new website. It is designed with users to be able to come find answers quickly, and we're also revamping it and always updating it for trainers also. So we're to be honest, we're still working on making your trainer page more intuitive and with more information, but one step at a time. But right now it's taking some major improvements. I'm going to bring up some software options that you can see, and they're right there on the home page now, right there in the middle. At retrotec.com, you can now download all the software that I'll be demonstrating today and how that works. More information on their quick guides. It's really an intuitive website that goes along with the gauge. When Retrotec began developing the new DM32 with the Wi-Fi and the touchscreen, it was probably close to 3 years ago that this was in its initial stages. And if you can imagine what type of cell phones or computers or other things that you've been using 3 years ago and how they've updated or changed, the Retrotec from the beginning realized that they needed to be able to update the firmware, the actual software inside the unit, to keep up with technology. As soon as you get a new phone or something, it just takes a few months before there's a newer and better one out there. We're going to release a new firmware update online in about 2 weeks. We may wait till the beginning of the year, depending on the holiday time frame, but that's one of the great features, is that we can add more options to the gauge, and all you need to do is plug your gauge in with a USB and set it up for a firmware update and go. If any of you have a router or have an IR camera or a variety of other stuff, they also have firmware updates. Many of your computers do also. So that's just one of the smartest features that they have, is this gauge will actually get smarter as technology also improves. There's a variety of connections that now are majorly an improvement upon how to use Retrotec equipment and the gauge itself. You can now use an Ethernet by itself to actually connect multiple gauges together. If you add a variety of hubs or routers, basically you can do unlimited number of gauges. The basic software that we have, fantastic, can default to 25 gauges and fans, so we're not sure if anybody's even exceeded that to this point. There's a 100-meter limit, but once you add more power hubs, there's really an unlimited range when you start using Ethernet to connect the gauges together. USB in general is limited by 15-foot lengths and up to 5 repeated times, so that's its max. You can buy, I just bought a 32-foot, but it has a super power hub that goes inside of it. So they're beginning to try to push the limits on that, but it really will never come close to what Ethernet does. And the one thing that everybody seems to be talking about is the Wi-Fi options that are now available with gauges that are out there today. So the DM32 will allow you to create its own direct connection. We refer to that as a hotspot. Some people refer to it as an access point. But you don't need any router or anything else to actually generate a Wi-Fi signal directly from the gauge itself. Right? It goes through simple steps for the settings, and the words we use are either create or join. So the create is to actually create a direct hotspot. You can connect to the gauge with its direct hotspot with your phone or your tablet, and it works with Android or Mac or any kind of computer that can actually find a Wi-Fi connection and connect to it. So this is a great feature to have. These kind of limits for these kind of Wi-Fi directs usually range between anywhere from maybe 100 to, you're really lucky to get 150 feet out of that. Depends on where you're at in the location. Again, everything's location, location, location. So if you're trying to go up 3 floors in a house that has wood floors and a variety of other challenges, you will be restricted on how far you can go. If you're going to go into a multifamily that has concrete floors, you're not going to go very far through up or down, but you will be able to use a signal across the same floor pretty well. If you want a stronger signal, or you want to be able to do more or do further, you always have the option to just join an existing connection or hotspot. A lot of your smart devices, like your phone or your tablets, can actually create a hotspot. Your computers now can create a hotspot, or you can just get a cheap router and actually use it. And Obviously, anything that's plugged into the wall with a 110 power supply will provide a much larger signal to be able to use for Wi-Fi. I have a basic router in my house. I have a 2-story house, and with the Create, I can go upstairs to the other side of the house, about where my master bedroom starts, and I've used it on Retrotec and other competitors' devices. It's about the same, and it doesn't go everywhere in my house. I cannot go to my attic from my first floor and get a strong signal. I had a router, and I can go anywhere in my house. I can go outside. I can get in my car and actually control any device with a router. So it definitely improves your flexibility and ability to use multiples. Some of the things that are just really exciting, and I'll use the word cool, are some of this free software package. This virtual gauge is a trainer's delight. This is one of the things that, when I was a trainer, I used virtual gauge or simulators that Retrotec had for the DM2, and I used one for Energy Conservatory for the DG700. And both work fine, but you actually have to have a real live gauge hooked up to the computer in order to actually demonstrate anything. Well, this virtual gauge will do that, and it'll do more. It'll allow you to actually control the actual gauge itself, and I can control that through Wi-Fi or through a wired system. And it also will work by itself. You can actually go right now to retrotec.com, right there on the front page, and there'll be a link to go to virtual gauge. You can download it on your PC, and you can open it up without any other gauge connected, anything else. You can go to the bottom, and you can actually hit simulator mode, and it'll actually operate. And it actually gives you real results while you're actually running a fake test. So for a trainer to be able to have their class download a gauge that can then actually be operated, I'll show you this live, but I just want to actually get a good understanding of what it does. And that you can actually have an exercise saying, what were the results for such and such blower door on range B when you actually had CFM set up. And the way it's already set up now is you know what those answers are as a trainer. So it's a really smart feature. And I can actually have multiples of these running when I have live gauges. For those of you that are more than trainers, you may be a QA or oversee some type of utility program of confirming that other people are also performing accurate tests. This is one of the new challenges that the industry is seeing. Do I just write stuff down? Do I take a picture of my gauge? What is that process? This is part of the free software package, and it is a simple program that does data logging. And I can connect the DM2 with the USB to the same software, or the DM32 I can connect to Wi-Fi. So I open up my PC, I hit open up the program, I connect, hit start logging, and I can actually determine the intervals, whether it's 1 second, 5 second, and when I hit start, it will actually show me the results on channel A and B. When I hit stop, it will actually automatically create an Excel spreadsheet that's easy to read, and anybody can actually access this. I actually set mine up so where it saves it is in Dropbox, so other people can have access to that Dropbox instantly and see the results. And if you weren't aware that anything that's in Dropbox or many of the cloud storage, you can tell if it's been altered or changed or if they modified it, because you can actually see different versions of it. So it's hard to read, so let me bring it up for you. This was a test I did that had a DM32 and a DM2. This one was wired, one was Wi-Fi. One was running a Minneapolis fan. The other was running a Retrotec 1000 blower door. So these are both blower doors. It tells me the range that it was set on. It's all coming from the gauge. Retrotec will tell me the speed. Here's the pressures from channel A and B as I ran the test. And it also tells me the results. So if I set it up for CFM or interchanges per hour, whatever the results are, it's actually giving me these directly. So I change the results, it will actually show up on the log. And there's a date time stamp for each one of those that it did. So if you're looking for something to either share with your provider or somebody else, or if you're working with trainers and you have them log their data, you can see what they were running or how what their gauge had. And I also kind of demonstrate what you can do live. But this is a great way to even just to cover your own assets to determine what were my results at the end of the day. All right, what I'm going to do now, actually I'm going to pause before I go into the actual secondary apps. I'm going to turn on the gauge itself and show you what are the things that it can do. What I have in front of me is on the screen is the video setup that's next to me. All right. So let me make a note here. I thought I'd let you know what I had next to my hand. So I have a iPad. I have a DM32, and next to it is the original version of the DM32. All right. And I have another gauge over here also. All right. So if I go to search for gauges, I want to make sure I know which ones are going to come up or what options are, so you see what my setup is. What I want to do is just focus on one gauge right now. 1 second. So what I want to remind you is that there's actually things that the gauge does all by itself. There's no software required. I don't need a tablet. I don't need anything else to get any of the results out of it. All right, we're live. I apologize for the dog. There must be a delivery. Okay, so what I can do is I can actually show you again. I showed earlier at the top I have a speed. This is telling me when I have a fan running, what's the speed? Obviously 100% is the fan is running full force, 100%. The next one is time average. Right now it's set for 10 seconds. Obviously that's my device and the range. It's a nice image to determine what I'm actually doing. Right? Channel A, channel B, and this is right now set for CFM per 100 square feet. And here's the area that goes along with that. So in order to get area per 100 square feet, I actually need some calculation that goes along with that. So I can actually tap on that and enter the actual area. So instead of a 1,200, maybe it's a 1,800 square foot home. Right. And now my settings for CFM per 100 square feet will be determined by this area that I've calculated. Set pressure is actually how we run a test. I can also set it up for just set speed. I can tell it to run at 20% fan speed. And there's a variety of settings. Right? So what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to just turn it on. You can see how it works. So it remembered my last settings. So I opened up my gauge. Last time I ran a house duct tester, and it was 1,200 square feet. So I've changed it to my new house, and I'm going to hit set speed, 2.5, set. There's no knob, no speed control to adjust, and I can set it for any speed. So actually, I put my duct tester in the other room, so hopefully it's not too loud. Oh, I have my time average actually set for 99. I did it on the last one, so let's change it real quick to time average 5 seconds. I go back. And how our time average works on the Retrotec is that it will wait for the first 5 seconds and give you the average. Then after that, it constantly updates using 5-second intervals. So you constantly get an updated readout, but it's always averaging your last setting that you had. So I had 99 seconds there earlier, and it would have waited for the first 99 seconds and then kept up with that regularly. I don't hit stop. So I have it set up for a device that actually has a few seconds of pressure down. So let me go through the settings real quick so I can explain what some of those are. All right. So at the top here I have baseline. Here's where I can enter area or volume. I quickly did time average a second ago, and the results, which also can be accessed from channel B. On the second page is how I would connect to a network. And And all these are also on the software that I mentioned that you can download. There's a variety of power downtime, sound, and on the next page I can actually see what my settings are for the firmware update. I touch it again, I go back to the beginning. Several people want to know how a baseline works. I'll do that real quick while we're here. Basically, I just hit baseline and capture. It will capture for as long as I'm wanting it to, and I can see if what the results are. I'll try and see if I can't force some results to happen there. And when I'm done, I can hit end capture, and I'll show you where that shows up. I go back to the main screen, and right there under channel A, it shows me with a baseline of 0.8. So I know that I have a baseline active. So when I go to, I'll change this real quick. So here's I change a device. It said when I press that, actually change the device. We'll pick a blower door. I have to pick a range. You cannot actually avoid that. So now what I do is set pressure 5.0 to run a blower door. My baseline is already involved in taking away from the readings. And that's a basic overview of what the gauge does by itself. Again, it will create its own network that other things can join, whether it's your phone, smartphone, or your tablet, or your computer, or I can have it join an actual network. Because I have multiple gauges in the room, I actually have a router that I use here inside. All right, so what I'll do now is actually show you the software, the virtual gauge, which you can download online. So here's my live gauge, still live, all right? And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up Virtual Gauge. It's a PC application. It says there's a new one to download. I'm going to skip it for right now just so we can simplify. All right, so the window is resizable. At the top it has a little settings icon. Most of your phones are using the same type of icon now. And what I can do is I can ask it to find gauges that are either connected USB or on a network. So I'm going to select network. I can even do both. I'm going to do network so I can find out how many gauges I have. And I do find gauge. One second. There's always a live error that must happen whenever you do a webinar. Oh, I know one. One second. Settings. So this is one of those great learning features that happens live is that when you are using any device, you need to confirm that the secondary device is on the same network. So I have my gauge set up to connect to the router that I have. All right, whether it's your phone or whether it's your smart device, you need to make sure that it's always on the same Wi-Fi connection. What commonly happens is that your device wants to find the best, strongest signal for Wi-Fi wherever it goes, and so if you shut things down, it will want to find maybe one that you didn't really want it to find. All right, so now I can confirm it's doing network. I'll tell it to find gauges. All right, so you saw I have 3 gauges on my setup over here, all right? I kind of covered them so they're here, all right? So what I now have is actually the serial numbers for each one of those gauges, all right? The 352 is the red one that's right next to me. The 04 is the primary one you see in the middle of the video screen. And the one sitting to the next to it was the other one. So I just select the gauge that I want and tell it to connect. I'm going to close the settings at the top so we just can focus on this one gauge. And I'll bring the video back so we're on the same path here. So this is the gauge that I'm working with the virtual gauge. And you can see that I have the same readings on the PC application. At the top, it shows me that I actually have the serial number. Our next version we're working on will actually be able to enter a name here. So if I had 3 or 4 people in the classroom, I can actually open up 3 or 4 of these and see each one of their gauges. In a second, I'll bring up another one and you can see how that works. So I can either click on the virtual gauge or I can select things on the gauge itself. So I bring my finger over, I'll change the device. At the bottom, I go change device. And this will not just read, but this will totally control all of the Minneapolis fans and devices that are out there. So I have the Minneapolis version 3. I'm going to say I have channel B, range B, all right? And now that's the fan that I'm actually using. So on the PC, I can hit set pressure. I'm just going to hit something low so it doesn't get too loud. Just 10, set. And obviously, I know you could for a variety of less frequent options, but I'm going to change my settings. So I'm going to go and click on channel B. And instead, I want to do air changes per hour. And I go back, and now I have air changes per hour. And based upon the opening I probably have on my setup, it doesn't want to share with me anything. So I'm going to go and I'll use the gauge now, and I'll change that to CFM. And I go back. All right, I'll increase the speed by using the green up or down arrows. I can either do it on the device, and it's telling me at the bottom here what my pressures I'm seeking. I can go up again. Now I'm seeking 20. And now I actually have results. So if I change my, hit stop and I change my range, I can do it right here, and I can go to, let's say it's B, and I go back, set pressure, we'll go back to 15, set. And again, I can jog up or down on the speed itself. Up in the left-hand corner is the ability to turn on or off the at feature. So I can now read at CFM 20, and that's based upon whatever I'm seeking. So if I want to do 0.5, here's how you can do your multi-point confirmation. Is I can see what I'm seeking here, and it gives me the results from the at feature. And as long as I'm usually within around 5% as the general rule of thumb of what I'm seeking, then I actually have an accurate assessment here. So I can go up again to 30. It's now reading at 30. Right, I'm now within my range. I can do it again to 35, and so on. So you can see, get an understanding about how you can do a multi-point. It does not record them yet. We are working on how to actually make many of the features that we want to do also become things that get captured. All right, this is a simple demo on what the gauge does by itself and how I can control the gauge with a simple app. How I find this to be the most rewarding is actually I can set my gauge up, we leave it at the door to do a blower door, leave it by the duct tester. I go to the kitchen, I open up my PC, and I can now run the entire test from the comfort of the kitchen table or the countertop, and not be overwhelmed by the noise. I can talk to clients if they're there. I can explain kind of what I'm doing, and not have to worry about the blower door being so loud that I can't even hear what I'm doing and see live results. So that's a great feature. But our goal was to actually explain more about how the training works. So let's take this to the next level. All right, I'm going to shrink this down a little bit. All right, so here's my gauges that I now have. All right, so I now have 2 gauges, and we could say that there may be multiple gauges in the actual classroom itself. All right, I'm going to go ahead and I'll leave this one on. This one's running the gauge that's right here on the yellow. It's that serial number. I'm going to open up another version of virtual gauge. I'll put it on this side just so we can keep track. When I open up the settings, I'm going to ask you to find gauges that are connected to the network. All right, and this one that's in the red is this serial number, and I tell it to connect. I'll close the setting so I now have it on the side. So now what I have is this gauge on that's red is being controlled and reading from the gauge I have here. So as a trainer, obviously you can see how this is incredibly beneficial, that I could have 3 or 4 gauges out in the classroom, and I can actually on one screen see what they're doing or even share that. So I can actually change the setting. I'm going to change this device to a Retrotec duct tester so we can see that we have different icons on the screens. Okay, so you saw the gauge change. I can also, again, interact with up to, I'm going to change the results to simple CFM, and I can do set pressure. This is not hooked up to a device, so it will not give me anything. Actually, I'll make that 25 pascals. And then over here, I can do the same, and I can actually create the either the back pressure or set to 0, whatever feature. I'm not going to go into the details about how to do a leakage outside. But you understand the concept that I now am actually able to not run back and forth or try and get 2 gauges in my hand or see what's happening. That not only will they maintain and keep their settings, but I'm now in the kitchen able to control both of them automatically. If that's not one of the best features I've seen for doing leakage outside, and how simple it can be, then yeah, it always was a challenging concept, let alone a challenging test. All right, I'm going to close this one down now. And I'll close that down. I want to find out if there's any, somebody said lost audio. Was our audio still out there, Colin and Sasha? Are there any other questions about the device itself? I'm going to do one more thing with the Gauge Remote, which is the applications you can download from Apple or Android, and show you how those work. Okay, I'm going to bring up the PowerPoint real quick and explain what are some of the features that are inherent with the applications themselves. The Gauge Remote is the app that you can go and download from Apple or Google Play, and it works on your Android tablets or phone, obviously your Apple phones or iPods or iPads, and it allows you to control the gauge from anywhere that you're connected to it, basically. It's a simple app. It basically looks as though you have the gauge on your phone or on your device. It's an identical layout, basically. I'll do a few more slides and I'll go more into the live demo, and so we can finish off some questions that. In terms of training and you know, the new world order that's out there, you can now have Coke and Pepsi in the same location, and nobody is overly concerned. Everything now works together. The DM32 will control energy conservatory fans or devices. When I see people live, I explain that, you know, right now your fan may be running great, but if you want to add a new brain to your system, the DM32 will bring a lot more to what you're doing every day and give you a great versatility and use your existing fan. So that's why we're trying to encourage a lot of people to consider upgrading their gauge, keep the fan, and see what the DM32 can actually do for your process and even in your training. Many trainers who want to upgrade, and we you know, try to talk to you, evaluate what you're doing. You may need to keep your DM32, your DG700 for training, and we understand that. So if you do want to try and do an upgrade, or do something like that, then please contact us. We actually have an entire price structure that's just for trainers. We try and evaluate your exposure, what you're doing, how much are you want to use the Retrotec equipment. I know there's some big trainers out there that are switching all of their gauges to DM32s because they'll work on any fan. I know there's some folks in Colorado that are looking to do that. I know Everblue is looking to do that. There's groups in California. So a lot of them realize that one gauge now can't control all. So it does not fit on your finger like a ring, so it will not actually override anything else. But it's definitely one thing that you can do to now get live results and communicate easily with other people and share your results. We do have a variety of resources that we actually try and promote for trainers, from sharing your information and promoting you online through our page. When we send out information about webinars, we can try and include your webinars or things that you're also doing. And we just kind of want to know that we don't actually want anybody to not use competitors. I feel, and Cullen Genge agrees wholeheartedly, that when you go leave training, you should understand how to use any gauge somebody puts in your hand. But the reality is, if you're going to buy one, then you really want to make the smartest investment that will control anything you might want to do. So as a trainer, I've always trained on all equipment, and I think anybody out there as a trainer understands that concept. So, so we have a variety of great quick guides for your students. We have a variety of packages that we're doing that want to work with you. We have specific discounts for trainers. So if you're interested in any of that, you can send us an email to trainers. How we got with that, Sasha? Or sales@retrotec.com. So one of the things that the software will do is I can actually use the gauge remote gauge on the PC, right? And like I said, do pre-course assignments or practice assignments. I can actually monitor multiple gauges in the classroom at one time, right? And many of you are savvy enough to understand that if there's something on my computer screen, then I can actually share that. So whether it's your student in the field, in the kitchen, or other people in the classroom, but I can actually go to, you can use GoToWebinar, you can use Skype, or you can use Google Hangout, which I prefer. It's free, easy to use, and I can actually share my screen with anybody who wants to log on and see my screen. And I can actually show you live gauge results while I'm actually doing my test, and I can actually hand over control over the screen. It's referred to as a remote control, and now anybody else that I'm sharing my screen with can actually use their mouse and control or change the settings I have set up. So if I'm in the field and I have my test, I'm like, oh, something's not right, I can find anybody with an internet connection, whether they're on the beach or anyplace else. They can bring up their computer as long as they have internet and see what my gauge is actually doing live at the actual gauge itself. So there's no extra software, anything's complicated or take snapshots. This is a great resource that I think more and more people will understand and be able to ask them. So the trainer partnership we have is really designed to make your life more successful. We want to work with you, really individually. So we don't have a packet to download or things like that. So we really want you to just go ahead and reach out to contact us. Depends on where you are located at. I or somebody from Retrotec will actually come visit, see what your facilities are like, and see what we can do to improve the relationship between the two of us and promote your products. In the meantime, make sure more people have access to the Retrotec equipment. So if you do have a Minneapolis equipment and you upgrade, that always includes the adapter so that you can still, there's no extra cost for the adapter, so you can control any fans you have in your group. And we also have discounted rates if you do not have Retrotec equipment, then we actually have rates that actually kind of work with your budget to try and make sure you have those in there. So there's some options. I'll bring the slide up, and I'm going to go back and show you some live controls over with the iPad. So you can buy a DM32 that's non-Wi-Fi, or you can buy a DM32 with Wi-Fi. If you're going to do commercial applications where you have multiple fans and I'm going to use Ethernet, then the DM32 non-Wi-Fi is a great resource for you. Still calculates, does all things you need, but for most people that have one gauge, the Wi-Fi is really the source I would recommend. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of the one gauge on the side, and I'll bring up the my iPad and change your view real quick. Okay, so what I have sitting on the side of the gauge, all right, let me make the screen bigger so this is our primary resource right now. Okay, so this is an iPad. This could be an Android device. Either one of those works fine, or you could use a Windows type tablet. And obviously I still have the same gauge back. Right? The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my settings real quick and just make sure I have it set for the right connection with Wi-Fi. So I have Wi-Fi up here, and it says it's connected to the right one. All right, so I'll go back. All right, and what I can do now is I'll just actually access the app. When it opens up, it's now looking for gauges that are there, and I can select a gauge and hit connect. And now with my Android or Apple device, I'm able to control the gauge itself. So I can now not be limited to wherever my PC can go, but I can now just limit it to wherever I can go. So now I can take my mobile device, smartphone, tablet, and move throughout the house and actually control the device. So I can do set pressure, just keep it low again, set. Some of the ways that this is actually incredibly applicable is for combustion safety testing. I can now leave my gauge in the CAS zone, go upstairs and open and close doors, turn on exhaust fans, or try and isolate what may be causing the CAS to combustion appliance zone to go higher or lower in pressures. For people who do duct testing and trying to find out how they're doing, you can actually keep a device up in your attic with you, leave the gauge and the fan down below. I can turn it on, see my results, turn it off, repair some more ducts, and see how I'm doing and how much success I'm having with that. You do the same with the blower door, same kind of concept. So in general, this now provides an enormous amount of mobility to be able to control and read what the gauge is actually doing. Looking over if there's any questions or anything I wanted to address. There are the questions about the using your mobile device or using the virtual gauge, or how this can be beneficial in your training. Please throw out a question for me. I can make sure I address it for you. I think I have a couple more polls real quick. I had a few other comments I had on my PowerPoint. I want to bring that back up real quick. All right, so here you go. This is the Christmas special that everybody's looking for. In January, there will be a time to upgrade for $950, all right, which is still a great price. And if you want to pre-order before the end of the year, they'll gladly take a deposit, and you will reduce your $100 back. Contact sales at retrotec.com. They can talk you through how to do the upgrade and how that actually works. If you have a single gauge, or one you actually cannot part with because you need it to train, they actually have a way to do that. They actually just put a little extra money on the credit card, and then we'll send you the new gauge. You send it back, and then they'll credit the account. So they're incredibly accommodating on how to actually make sure that you don't need to adjust your business to try and do an upgrade. So that actually is a phenomenal price, and it won't be happening all next year, but it does happen in very rare occasions. So I encourage you to think about that and take advantage of it. I did all my polls, so I'm good there. The DM32 ships as a single gauge. You can consider whether you want to keep yours or upgrade, or you can also get it with any of the new systems that are out there. And we also do, for trainers, we do buyback systems. So if you have an older Retrotec, or even sometimes, depending on the condition, other manufacturers, we're willing to work with you to find out what it is you need to make sure that you are, again, you're a successful organization. So please contact us at sales@retrotec.com, and we definitely want to make sure we're working with you directly.